Hiya, Rick here on Certifiably Ingame. Okay, so San Diego Comic Con's just been, and as usual, now's the time on the internet where all the channels are going to be posting their reviews and analysis and thoughts videos on trailers and whatnot, so I thought I'd jump in on that because, of course, why not? Now, this is obviously, in case you can't tell, going to be a bit more unscripted than my usual stuff, but I'm looking at the Star Trek Discovery Season 2 trailer. I figured I probably should do, as I did look at Season 1's trailers when they were first dropping. So immediately a couple of things do jump out at me from this trailer, and that's more to do with the overall theme of it. What we're seeing in this reveal for Season 2 is pretty much more along the lines of what I personally had in mind when Star Trek Discovery was first announced and the time period that it was set in was first announced. You know, in terms of the visual overhaul and the way things look, with the look of the Enterprise and the new uniforms. They're not exactly as they were in the 60s, and to be fair, I kind of expected that. They're overhauls and redesigns of the sort of existing in-universe designs. You know, with the standout block colours. Although, yes, it is practically the Discovery uniform just in one block colour, even with the collar and everything. There are a couple of little changes that I quite like the addition of the badge, for example. Looks like it's actually part of the uniform as opposed to being a separate removable badge. Little things like that I do like, as well as the rank insignia being on the sleeves rather than all this gold embossed on the shoulders that the Discovery uniforms have going on. Ideally, what I want to hear is that these are the new uniforms going forward, and you know what, Discovery can stick with their older uniforms for a while because it does take a time for the uniforms to transition, but I'd love for this to be the new Starfleet standard going forward. I don't think it will be. I think it's going to stick to the continuity it established in the Discovery novels, where the crew of the Constitution class being faces and representatives of the Federation, the Constitution still being a relatively new design of ship and sort of the tier end of technology, the uniforms for those crew were different, and they were the colourful uniforms being more diplomatic and approachable, that sort of thing, whereas everyone else in Starfleet just wore the drab blue. Now, from the get-go, we're introduced to Captain Christopher Pike, who was in command of the Enterprise during this time period. Now, in terms of continuity and lore, it's always been a little vague. Captain Pike's been what I like to term sort of like a memory beta captain of the Enterprise. There's really not much alpha content for him out there. He's literally in the cage, and then the episode where he eventually ends up with the Telosians. There's nothing else. There's nothing else in primary canon about that character. So he's usually been the subject of many of the books and the comics, things like that, things that aren't necessarily canon to the story. I think they'd be fools not to include some of it though, because there's a lot of really good stuff out there in terms of like Pike's background. But even the exact date that he took command of the Enterprise isn't necessarily nailed in stone. We know from Discovery that Robert April was an established captain, and according to the sort of memory beta, he took command of the Enterprise at launch at 2245 and eventually relieved command sometime in 2250. And that was for a single 5-year mission, so presumably Pike's been in command of the Enterprise for the last 6 years or so. This would actually put it in post the events of The Cage, because that was in 2254, so this is 2 years after that, so he seems to have rediscovered his zest for command and life, what with giving out commands like hit it and saying about having a little fun along the way. In terms of other existing characters, I'm presuming, I know the character for number 1, or Una as she gets called in memory beta, is actually been cast, so she's going to be in it, but I wouldn't expect to see much of her, considering if Pike's on board the Discovery, she's presumably going to be taking command of the Enterprise, so I don't imagine we're going to see much of her, or the Enterprise in general, by the look of it from this trailer, although this is probably only the first couple of episodes. It doesn't look like we'll be spending much time over there in terms of at least the bridge and the iconic locations. What I was pleased to see was it looks like we do get a visit to Spock's quarters, and there's this grating and grilling that we see a shot of Burnham like sort of behind, and that's very reminiscent of the architecture that was going on in the original show. So again, this is what I was saying about how it's a redesign and a reimagining of stuff that was there, which is kind of what I was expecting Discovery to be instead of the complete overhaul that we inevitably got. So thumbs up for that. One thing that did stand out to me not exactly in a negative light. I know this is going to sound like such a weird criticism and a sort of, well, at first it was too hot, then it's too cold kind of reaction, but the humour in it seemed a bit over the top. Just a little bit. It seemed like they're making a great effort to be like, no, look, honestly, this is Star Trek. Look how light-hearted it is, and look how happy it is. And I know that is kind of what we were asking for as a fan. Well, at least I wanted to see a lighter version of the future, like Star Trek usually is depicted as. But the humour didn't. It kind of felt a bit out of place. But I think that's mostly because I've got used to Discovery being this dramatic, strife-filled universe of pain. But again, double thumbs up this time for the narrowing down and the hitting home of the themes of exploration and discovery, like you'd expect from a series called Star Trek Discovery, not Star Trek War. But in terms of what we actually see for the trailer, in terms of narrative, I guess there's a couple of things I can speculate on here. It looks like Pike's had to commandeer the services of the Discovery in order to potentially utilise the scientific divisions of the ship. After all, it is a primarily research vessel with lots of individual projects and specialised equipment. I would suggest that perhaps some of these little Discovery eggs that drop out of its bum are probably part of this specialised equipment that they're going to need to go and find out what's going on with all this red energy going off at different points around the universe that Spock also seems to be investigating, because of course Spock's involved with it somehow. And it looks like perhaps at the centre of one of these events there is in fact some sort of maybe new life. It strikes me as perhaps something even vaguely Iconian, like from another dimension almost, with its tendril-like arms. It's all very weird. I'm not saying it is Iconians, I'm saying that's the sort of weird ethereal vibe I get from it. But wherever it is that they inevitably take these pods to investigate, there has been a Starfleet presence here before, because as we can see, the corridor that they work their way down has like quarantine padding all down it, so I'm presuming perhaps another starbase or another ship. We also see a shockwave hit the Discovery at some point, so I'm imagining that's what happens when they first get there, and they realise they can't take the ship in any further, and therefore have to use these little, again, Discovery egg nodules. I don't know what to call them. More little robotic ships. Naturally, there are then going to be lots of explosions and action and stuff like that, because we've got the budget, hey, might as well spend it. What gets me, though, is that there's a scene a bit further on with the entire crew gathered in what looks like an underground cave around presumably Federation tech, judging by its metallic angular frames and sort of holographic projection. I don't know what sort of event would necessitate such a large gathering of crew. Looks like they're all from the Discovery. What on earth are they all doing here? I don't think it's on board the Discovery, because the roof looks like it's a cave, so why is the crew being relocated from the ship to an asteroid base or a mine or whatever this rocky surface is, perhaps the same asteroid field we see the Discovery going through to begin with? And of course we get to meet a new member of the Discovery crew, though whether or not they've always been there and we've never actually met them, or they're a recent addition, perhaps a merger from the Enterprise, I don't know. After all, we do see a bit later on, we see Pike wearing a Discovery uniform, and I reckon he's probably doing that because if he's going to be in command of the Discovery for any period of time, it's a good way to ingratiate himself with the crew, you know, to adopt their uniforms, so as not to stand out as the captain that's just turned up from another ship and is ordering them around. After all, so far the Discovery doesn't have a very good track record when it comes to captains. But yeah, this series looks like it is, at least in the first half, trying to double down back on the themes of exploration, like Star Trek is known for, and the more light-hearted, buoyant approach to the future. Whether that will hold throughout the entire series, I don't know, because the Klingons are going to come back, and I personally still have an issue with how they look, and that's just a completely different topic. But whereas for seeing the trailers for Discovery Season 1, I was equal parts apprehensive and motivated, this time I am a little less apprehensive. I'm hoping they have kind of learned their lessons in what people generally sort of want from Star Trek. There's enough science fiction shows about a gritty future. Star Trek was always the one about what we can be if we strived as a collective humanity. On a couple of other notes, when the Discovery went to warp, I noticed a tiny little pod just above the nacelle of the NCC 1701, so I don't know why that's been deployed in advance. Perhaps the Enterprise needs repairs, but I did enjoy seeing the Discovery actually at warp rather than spore driving, which we have reason to believe has now been put on ice, potentially permanently. Although I can't imagine a Section 31 looking at a technology like that and just leaving it lie. Overall, I'm most looking forward to the appearance and the inclusion of Pike and potentially other crew members from that era, Spock and Number 1 in particular. I'm hoping to see a bit more of the Enterprise, but equally I think any actual overall redesign that they do, to be honest, I think they're going to steer away from showing the Enterprise at all, because if they redesign it even slightly, it's going to incite the ire of some people, and if they don't change it at all, it is going to be slightly disappointing for some others who are going to be like, well, you could have changed it and updated it a bit. So, yeah, I think they'll just avoid staying away from the iconic parts of the Enterprise altogether. So, overall, that's my sort of initial thoughts, reactions, kind of analysis, even though there's not actually that much to look into there, apart from really what I've mentioned. I want to know what this is, this glowing red alien thing with tendrils. I'm looking forwards to Pike and the crew from that time, and I'm really hoping that they say that these uniforms are here to stay. And finally, with the Section 31 tease at the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 1, I'm hoping they play a part somewhere in Season 2 as well, perhaps trying to appropriate the spore tech, because that would explain how Section 31 in the 24th century can just pop up and disappear whenever they like at will, seemingly without using any transporters or leaving a transporter log. Perhaps they have exclusive use of the spore tech, and that they keep it out of Federation standard hands because they don't want to lose their edge. I'm not really looking forwards to any of the Klingon based stuff, but hey, that's not till later on in the series anyway, so for these first couple of episodes I'm actually looking forwards to it again. I'm hoping that it's going to live up to my expectations. So until the next video, thanks for listening to my rambling unscripted thoughts on the Star Trek Discovery trailer, and until next time, I guess, punch it, hit it, engage, go, forwards, momentum, fast, that one, warp, whatever, go, bye!